A lot of my pastor friends don't have church today, and they're doing much like we are. They're recording their message. Some of them went ahead and recorded their message last night, and they were working on it last night so they could get it uploaded this morning so people could watch it kind of during church time and things like that. And I was looking to see what they were talking about. Since it's like getting the newspaper a day early. Since they put their messages out there, what are they talking about today? And a lot of them, obviously, the theme of a coronavirus. Imagine that. I didn't see any top 10 hints on where to find toilet paper. I was looking, I didn't see any of that. By the way, if you walk out of here this morning in your suit coat, we're patting you down, stealing toilet paper from the church restroom, shame on you, No, I think we're okay here. A lot of them were preaching about the fear or anxiety that goes along with coronavirus. I'm going to assume this morning, especially if you're here today, that fear and anxiety is probably not your top problem this morning in regards with coronavirus. I don't think most of us are scared of it. I don't think so. If your immune system is bad and you're within those problem areas where this can affect, I understand, and I hope you're cautious, and should be, of course. But I think most of us find all this to be a disruption to our normal routine of life. I think we find it to be a disruption to our schedule. So I'm going to talk about that angle today a little bit. But I wrote some things down. I like to be a glass half full kind of guy. And if you find a glass that's only half full, don't drink the rest of it right now, okay? Just don't. You never know where it came from. But with a glass half full, there's some things that have already begun that I think are benefits in this type of environment. Jesse and I were, as you know, had helped our neighbor who passed away recently, and Desi had helped her go through a lot of her stuff. And one of the things that Mrs. Hoover gave Desi just before she went into a home and then ultimately passed away, she gave Desi her ration book from World War II, which we find interesting now, especially in lieu of people buying 400 rolls of toilet paper at a time. This is why they had ration books in the 1940s, and so forth. And we've just gone through that. It's almost a complete book. It's probably worth something on eBay or something, but just to see how people in the 40s and stuff, or especially in the Great Depression, I guess, leading up to World War II, they were used to this, right? This was a routine. This was something they had seen. I think my generation really hadn't seen this before. I think there were long gas lines in the 1970s when I was a kid. But other than that, we've never really gone to the store and found empty shelves and depleted things and people hoarding stuff and that type of a thing in our culture. We haven't seen that in our country, and that's kind of a new thing. But in the midst of all this that's going on, in the midst of all the turmoil, I guess, that's going on, I wrote down 4 things that are positives. This is not my message. This is the precursor to my message, right? 4 things that are positives that are going on. One of them, for good or bad, this just created some more family time, right? Dad's not watching the NCAA March Madness for the next couple of weeks here. It's not happening. There's no sports. There's no nothing. I was even saying to Des, I'm like, well, at least it's a good time to go read a book. But you better have the book, because even the libraries are closed, or you better download it on Amazon or something, because even access to that, there's not much going on. Because of that, this has slowed down. Number 2, it's slowed down the busyness of our lives. And one of the things that we talk about a lot as a church and as religious people and church leaders is the fact that life today is so busy, right? Kids are going everywhere, practice and activities and parties, and there's just so much going on all the time, and suddenly that has been ground to a halt. There's not any of that. So I understand by about Wednesday night or Thursday, people are going to be going out of their mind, right? What do we do with the kids? Where do we take them? I understand that, but it does slow that down. It kind of resets things a little bit. I wrote down, because of that, number 3, it refocused on the priorities of life. We are refocused on the priorities. You see that, whether it's at the grocery store or whatnot. I think it was close to 2010, 2011. My father-in-law and I were talking about some of the things happening in our country. To be honest with you, I think it was probably during the Obama administration when gun sales and ammunition sales went up and things were changing a little bit in our country. My father-in-law said to me back then, he's like, if things get bad in our country, he said, the first thing that's going to go? And I'm like, guns? He's like, no, toilet paper. He said, everybody will be looking for toilet paper. I'm like, really? He's like, oh yeah. He's a prophet, But he's right, that seems to be what's going. So, but what do we reprioritize what's important? You walk through the store, you see what's really important. It's not Doritos. Did you notice that? It's not Doritos. When the governor made the action there on Friday afternoon, he was closing schools for 2 weeks. Desi and I were actually painting at home on Friday afternoon and working on the one bathroom. And the governor made that, and I'm like, we should go to Giant real quick and just get a few essentials that we need, because this is going to get crazy. And it was. By the time we got to Giant, it was a zoo. But I'll be honest with you, we did buy tortilla chips, ice cream, and coffee. Because I'm like, if we're locked in, this is really important to me. I'm just saying, do we not reprioritize? We look at things that are important, and suddenly, isn't it funny? The first thing to go in our country is sports, right? All the sports were just shut down and on. Priorities become refocused all of a sudden, and some of that's good. We put a re-emphasis on the things that are most important. And then the last one I wrote down is, I think more than ever, this should make us thankful for what we have and have had here in the United States of America. We take things for granted here in the United States. We go down, we are a society that just stops by the store on the way home to pick up a pack of toilet paper. And we can't do that anymore. The rest of the world may be a little more used to that. We're not. We're not used to seeing long lines and empty shelves and things like that. We've been so blessed in our country, and I think, if anything, this has kind of refocused that. But what I wrote down was, I think more than anything, this has disrupted our lives, right? We see that, and we'll probably sense that even more over the next week or two. It's changed what we normally do. It changed, obviously, school and daycare. All the colleges have closed and sent kids home. And, we're seeing the effects of that at my house. I'm sure some of you are too. Not that Philip was already home, but it has changed his schedule and all this testing and all the things that he normally does. It's upended a lot. It's changed work schedules. It's changed what we, our regular routine of life. It's changed, again, what we watch on TV and what we're going to do. Philip said to me, "What are you going to do Sunday afternoon? There's no sports on." I'm like, "Well, take a nap, I guess." I don't know. It's just different. It's a different routine. It's a different schedule. And it's disrupted a lot of that. Not that it's, listen to me, I'm thinking, wasn't that long ago, I think it was last weekend, we were talking about the people in Middle Tennessee whose lives were upended by a tornado and really devastated that part of the country, which was very quickly forgotten, I think, in the midst of the coronavirus. Their lives were disrupted. And I think we would agree in a much more long-lasting and much more tough way, hard way than ours. And they're dealing with that. So sometimes life doesn't. Sometimes we get disrupted. And so I wanted to look at just a passage today of someone whose life was totally disrupted. As I was thinking about that and planning that, I began to write down a bunch of names. Because there's a lot of people in the Bible that God came along and disrupted their regular routine. First one I was thinking about was Moses on the backside of the desert. Just walking along, taking care of Jethro's, herds, and all of a sudden found a burning bush. And his life changed dramatically. God obviously immediately changed direction of what he was content to be a shepherd the rest of his life. He was content to take care of those herds the rest of his life. And God said, "I have a plan for you. I have a plan for my people." And it changed everything. So his life was very much so disrupted over the next 40 years. I wrote down Jonah. Jonah was disrupted. He tried to disrupt it himself. But God kept disrupting him to get him back on track. It wasn't very long before not only was he on a boat heading the opposite direction, but he ended up in the belly of the great fish. And so God was disrupting him to get him where he wanted him to be. Jonah had other plans and other perspective and other place that he was heading, and God got a hold of him and brought him back. I wrote down the same. How about Paul, who at the time was named Saul on the road to Damascus, and he had a plan of what he was doing. He thought he was going to do something good for God, get rid of these crazy Christian people and this new sect that had arisen. He was going to go after him, and he thought he was doing a righteous and noble thing. And God literally got a hold of him in the middle of the road and disrupted his plans and sent him on a totally different path. Same with Nehemiah, who was just a cupbearer and seemed to be pretty content being the cupbearer as he showed up day after day, and all of a sudden the king asked him, what do you want to do about the problem? What do you want to do about the city? Nehemiah finds himself rebuilding a wall not much longer. Totally changes his life. So, this morning I want to look in Judges chapter number 6. I want to look at Gideon. And Gideon seems to be in a time of turmoil in his country. And God found him in a very unusual place and put him in an unusual situation. I know this is a familiar story to us. We're not going to read the whole thing, but we're going to look at some things in Gideon's life, how he responded in the midst of this disruption. Judges chapter 6 verse 1 tells us the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord delivered them into the hand of Gideon for 7 years. So, there's been a sin problem in the country. We know this, the book of Judges, up and down, up and down, up and down. They fall into sin, they cry out for a deliverer, God sends a judge, they turn back, about 40 years later, they're mired in sin again, there's another problem. This is a cyclical problem, really for the nation of Israel all along, but especially in the book of Judges. And here they are again. They had turned back to sin. And now they're under the hand of the Midianites. Verse 2, the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel. Because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them dens, which are in the mountains, caves and strongholds. So it was when Israel had sown, the Midianites came up, the Amalekites, the children of the east, even they came up against them. They encamped against them. They destroyed the increase of the earth till they had come unto Gaza. They left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor ass. They came up with their cattle, their tents. They came as grasshoppers for the multitude, for both they, their camel, were without number. They entered into the land to destroy it. So we see the problem, right? As they're so afflicted by the Midianites, the Bible tells us they're making caves. And so again, talk about people disrupted. We're finding some temporary empty shelves at the local grocery store. These people are out of their homes. They moved into caves. They're trying to hide from the Midianites. They're trying to hide from the Amalekites. They're under great affliction. I think we would agree, obviously, much greater affliction than what we are dealing with right now. But because of their sin, God has brought this upon them. And they're scrounging, and every time they sow the field, and every time they start a herd, the Midianites, the Amalekites, and others come along and take it, destroy it, take it for themselves, leave them nothing. They are under great affliction. So they begin to cry out to the Lord for help. I want to jump down to verse number 11. There came an angel of the Lord, sat under an oak, which was in Ophrah, that pertained unto Joash, the Abizarite. And his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared unto him, said unto him, the Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. Let's stop right there. Gideon, I find a couple things there interesting, somewhat humorous, if you look at all that. First of all, here's Gideon. He's hiding behind the winepress, but he's hiding behind the winepress to thresh the wheat. So obviously trying to distract the Midianites that have been trying to get this stuff. He's hiding where they would not expect him to be. It's not winepress season. It's not grape harvest season. So he's using that area to try to thresh the wheat, not the usual place they would thresh wheat, because the Midianites are looking there. So he's trying to distract them. He's trying to hide. And in the midst of him hiding, the angel comes and says, Gideon, you what? Mighty man of valor. That's ironic, isn't it? Isn't that funny? I think that's funny. Gideon is anything but that. I was thinking about this as I was working on the message, even last night. You know, the angel of the Lord didn't come and say that to Samson. Because Samson was pretty full of Samson. Right? Samson was full of himself. The angel of the Lord didn't come and say, Samson, thou mighty man of valor. Because Samson would have said, yeah, let me tell you, you got that right, you know. Samson thought of himself as a superhero, and he was like larger than life. He was just full of himself. Gideon was the quiet, the meek. He's hiding from the Midianites. He's threshing wheat behind the winepress. He's trying to hide. And in the midst of hiding, the angel roots him out and says, Gideon, you're a mighty man of valor. And Gideon's like, who, me? And I'm like, what? You're the one God's chosen to lead the people, to lead the army, to remove the hand of the Midianites. You're the one. And Gideon's stunned. We know this. I'm not going to get into the rest of his testing as he puts out the fleece and he checks and then he has to double check. And obviously, we see nothing about valor in Gideon's life. We see him being timid. We see him being reluctant. We see him being unsure. We don't see a lot of faith. Not at this point of Gideon's life. We will. But at this point in Gideon's life, he seems unsure. He seems apprehensive. I think Gideon was content to be left alone. He really was. He was happy just to be left alone. He was just trying to hide out from the Midianites. He wasn't looking for the angel of the Lord. He wasn't looking to be the deliverer. We understand his conversation even in verse 13 when he knows they need one. And he's been looking for one, but it's not him. Not me. You know, someone should do this, but not me. Listen, his life was totally disrupted. His life was totally disrupted, first of all, by the Midianites. They were making things miserable. All the work that they were doing was being stolen, trampled, destroyed. Everything he worked on, all his effort was just often useless because they came and took it. So he's trying to hide, he's trying to be quiet, he's trying to be subtle, and it's really hard when the angel of the Lord shows up and says, hey, you. Oh, no, not me. Yes, you. Now's the time. So his life was disrupted by the Midianites. His life was, second of all, disrupted by God. Because God had a plan for him in the midst of the problem. God's like, now's your time. I think so much, and I've used this phrase, we all do, conversation Mordecai had with Esther when they talked back and forth. And as they talked back and forth, he said to Esther, perhaps you're here for what? Such a time as this moment. I thought about that a lot. Just bear with me for a second. We don't know a whole lot about Esther up until that point. In fact, we know that she was orphaned and her cousin was raising her because her parents had died. And we know that she was an obedient young lady. The Bible tells us that she listened to him as she always had. The Bible gives us some indication of the way she lived, but we don't know much else about her. And I was really thinking about this. We really don't know anything much about her after the events of Haman and all that. We don't really know anything about her after that. I mean, she really was on the scene for such a time as this. That was her moment. That was why, we read about her. The nation of Israel has remembered her and has feast about her because of what she did, and it was all centered around that moment of time. That moment. And I'm saying that because how often do we find that maybe God has us here for something specific and something special? I think it often catches us by surprise. Often catches us by surprise. That person that we talk all the time about people like D.L. Moody, who preached great messages, great services, saw thousands, perhaps millions saved, but thousands and thousands of people got saved under the ministry of D.L. Moody. And his work, the institutions he started, the books he wrote, are still having an impact today. But it all goes back to that shoe salesman that witnessed to D.L. Moody and led him to Jesus Christ. He was there for, which one, listen, we know this, which one's more important in God's eyes? Well, neither is more important in God's eyes. They did the job that they were given to do. One was just to witness to D.L. Moody. Well, I don't know what else he did. I don't know who else he led to the Lord. We don't know. I guess I don't need that. We don't know who else he talked to. We don't know who else he led to the Lord. But he had an impact in D.L. Moody, and D.L. Moody went on and reached thousands and thousands for the Lord. Listen, he was there for such a time as this. This is Gideon's moment. Gideon is just threshing wheat. He's just trying to hide from the Midianites. He's just trying to get some stuff done and hidden and put away before they come and take it. He's trying to take care of his family. He's trying to take care of his loved ones. And the angel of the Lord says, guess what? For such a time as this, now's your time. And so I'm just asking, here we are in the midst of coronavirus. Things are just going along on schedule. For the church, things are just going on schedule. We're doing our regular routine of stuff. We're planning our activities, and we're scheduling an Easter egg hunt, and we got the choir practicing for Easter, and we got our regular routine of stuff going along, and all of a sudden it grinds to a halt. It puts us out of our usual routine, and it puts us out of our usual circle of stuff, and it puts us into a whole different thing. Perhaps in the midst of this, God has a plan for us as a church, us as individuals, for such a time as this. That God disrupts us a little bit and says, no, there's other people to talk to. There's other people to be a witness to. There's other people to reach. There's other things we can do. There's other ministries we can get involved in. There's other places. Maybe God's just having the church right now saying, be still and know that I am God. Be still. Because we get so busy. Our schedules get so full. Our calendars get so hectic. And God's saying, listen, I have a plan for you, church. Right now, the country's worried about the coronavirus and getting stuff at the grocery store. How about as a church, you just be still, recharge, and get ready? Do you think the Lord's coming back soon? I do. I think he's coming back real soon. And maybe we have one more opportunity for one last push, for one last evangelistic zeal, for one last opportunity to try to reach our community, our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones, the people we're in contact with. And maybe God's saying, listen, I'm taking all the distractions out of your life for a couple weeks. All the busyness, all the craziness, all the stuff you have in your schedule, it's gone. So just listen to me for a couple weeks. Listen, quiet your heart, recharge, because we have one more push before the Lord comes. Maybe. I'm not trying to be a prophet, you understand. I'm saying, what is the time? What is the plan? We're here for such a time as what? As this. To do what? I don't know yet. But I think we should not look at this as a bad thing. We should look at this as what can the Lord teach us in the midst of this. That's why I love Psalm 23. And I share Psalm 23 usually every time I go to the hospital. Listen, I make you to lie down in green pastures. You know what God has done for us as Christians, as a church? He's stopped us and made us lie down. Schedule's gone. I joked about it, but I'm serious. I got a church with no bulletin, and it didn't matter because there's nothing happening. There's just nothing on the schedule. We got nothing happening. I make you lie down where? In green pastures. That's where we feed. That's where we grow. That's where we learn. That's where we get the nutrition we're supposed to have. God doesn't make his sheep lie down in barren places. He makes us lie down in green pastures. And so I think that's a promise we have from Scripture. And when God stops us, there's always an opportunity to grow. We may not do it. We may be stubborn sheep that don't eat. But the opportunity is there to grow. I think this is what we do. I'm serious about this. When we are sick and in the hospital, all of us, myself included, when I don't feel good, all I want is to feel better. Right? Get me out of the hospital, get me out of this bed, get this bug, flu, cold, virus, get it out of me. I just want to feel better. I have a toothache. All I'm consumed about is getting rid of the toothache. But God says, sometimes I make you lie down in its green pasture. It's time for you to grow. It's time for you to learn. It's time for you to recharge. I wonder if God isn't doing that with us as a church, in general, and local, with us right now. We have that time. In the midst of our schedules being disrupted, we have a time to recharge. We have a time to refocus. I would hope, I know some people are going to say, Pastor, you say this all the time, and I do. I hope in the midst of this, we spend more time with the Lord, more time in devotions. Listen, we're either going to read the Bible or we're going to listen to the news about the coronavirus. And the second one doesn't sound appealing to me anymore. I've heard all I care to hear about it, So how about we spend more time in the Word, more time in prayer, more time in Bible study, and draw closer to Him. Why? Because He makes us lie down in green pasture. It's a time we can grow. It's a time we can recharge. And maybe, just maybe, looking back in the scope of things when we're in heaven someday with the Lord will say, I stopped the church for a couple weeks to recharge, to get what you needed, because there was one last evangelistic push before the trump sounds and the Lord comes back. Maybe. We need to look at these as opportunities that God gives us. We know about Gideon needing his confirmations. We talked about that already. We know Gideon's faith was further tested when he began to shrink the army. I think that's at the beginning of chapter number 7. I'm going to kind of skip through this because I'm assuming we all are very familiar with the story. But chapter 7, verse 2, the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, my own hand has saved me. Now therefore go, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned to the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. So he had 32,000, and when he said, if anybody that doesn't want to be here can go home, 22,000 immediately left. And so I think, listen, again, here's Gideon. The Gideon who wasn't acting like a mighty man of valor. The Gideon who put out several different tests to see what God really wanted. This Gideon finally put out the call, we need an army, we're going to do something about the Midianites. The people were sick and tired of the Midianites. So 32,000 showed up. Like, yeah, let's go. God said, that's way too many. I'm sure Gideon, we don't know this, don't you think Gideon's like, what? He was probably happy. Don't you think Gideon was happy? He put out the call and 32,000 people showed up. He's like, okay, this is doable. And God's like, no, that's way too many. 22,000 went home. We know this. Verse 4. Lord said unto Gideon, the people are yet too many. Bring them down to the water. I will try them for thee. And it shall be that of whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. Whosoever I say unto thee, this shall not go, the same shall not go. So he brought them down, the people to the water. The Lord said unto Gideon, everyone that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise everyone that boweth down upon his knees to drink. The number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300. The rest of the people bowed down their knees to drink the water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped, will I save you. Stop right there. All right. So he called 32,000 people showed up. Think of that. That's like a football stadium or a baseball stadium full of people. As he got down, as he pared the people down, he got down to 300 people. 300 people. Well, this sanctuary seats about 300 people. That's not much of an army, right? That's a group. 300 people, you can know all them by name. 300 people, that's not much of a... What's this? We know how many Midianites there were. The Bible says they were like grasshoppers. Without number, the Bible said in chapter number 6. And here by chapter 7, he's down to 300 people. Now listen, I did this for the kids in chapel a couple different times when I preached in Christian school, but what are these 300 going to do? They're going to go and surround the army of the Midianites. The Bible tells us that they armed themselves with 3 things, right? A torch, a pitcher, and a horn. And I didn't do it this morning at a Sunday morning service, but when I've done this in the past, I brought a kid up from chapel or something, I brought him up, and I would hand them all 3 of those things. And it's kind of awkward to stand there with a torch, and a pitcher, and a horn. And we'd probably take the horn and tuck it under your arm or something. Or maybe these 300 men put it around their neck with a strap or something. I don't know. But this is not the most efficient way to go to battle, folks, right? They're going to go up against the great Midianites with a torch, a pitcher, a horn. That's what they're going to go. And they're going to surround the army of the Midianites. The Bible says, again, they were like grasshoppers. It was a big crowd. I don't know how many. I've tried to picture it as like down at Gettysburg, looking at the armies that were on Cemetery Ridge. 300 surrounding them. When I've seen the flannel graph picture that they supply to the elementary kids, they show guys standing side by side. But 300 surrounding the army of the Midianites at night, think of 300 men surrounding, Cemetery Bridge. You're not anywhere near anybody else, right? I do this to make the point. Gideon started with very little faith. But I think he and his men ended with a great deal of faith. Because they stood out there. Imagine standing there with the Midianite army down there. And you got your torch that you're trying very hard not to let shine, with a pitcher over it, right? And a horn that you're about to blow. And there's nobody that you can see to your left, and nobody you can see to your right, because they're way out there. And when Gideon makes the call, you're supposed to break the pitcher and blow the horn and announce your presence. And you're really hoping that you wait just a split second and let, Joe over there do it first, just in case, Is that human thinking, But we have these guys that did that. They followed the instructions of Gideon, which were the instructions of God. They announced their presence. They shone their light. If the Midianite army had decided to attack, they had no weapons to defend themselves. They had a horn, a torch, a broken pitcher. They didn't have much to fight off the army. But we know how God had gotten into the thinking of the Midianites and disrupted their thinking. They had turned on each other, and Israel won a great victory that day. Listen, God disrupted their routine. God disrupted their thinking on how to fight a battle. God disrupted the common sense of how to take on this army that's as large as grasshoppers in number. God disrupted all that and won a great victory against the odds. Gideon and his men learned to stand alone in order to stand together. And they did that. They were willing to take that stand and do the right thing because they knew God was on their side. I wrote down some things. I think we find in the midst of the stuff that we're going through that things are disrupted, like our schedules, for sure. Right? Schedules are totally different. Our usual routines out of whack. I had some people come in this morning and say to me, well, we didn't have Sunday school. That threw off my whole day. Already we're out of whack. We're not doing our usual stuff. We're not on our usual schedule. We're not doing our usual things. We're not. Maybe your finances are up. I hope you didn't watch your 401k last week. Hope not. Don't do that. It's like riding a roller coaster right now, right? Up and down and all over the place. We can't, well, thank goodness. Listen, I'm serious. Our faith is not in 401k program. It's not. It's going to go where it goes. We have no control over that. Probably your plans are starting to get disrupted. Vacations or hobbies, things you were going to do. We had some folks in our church that were heading down to a hockey game last night. That didn't happen. We got people going on different trips and bus trips and vacations. I said to Desi, how about we got Ron and Jan Yinger down in Sarasota, Florida, watching spring training. Or not. I guess we're just sitting at the beach house, There's no spring training, no baseball. Our plans get disrupted. Our schedules get disrupted. The things we thought we were going to do get changed. Things get topsy-turvy. And I understand. Listen, I understand it. I really think in the big scope of things, this is a small thing compared to how things could be disrupted. Right? You have a health issue, you lose your job, you lose a loved one. Boy, things are really disrupted. This is small in comparison to that. This too shall pass. They're going to deliver more Charmin to the grocery stores this week. They will. They haven't stopped making it. We'll be okay. And is that what everybody's panicking about? That's what they're panicking about. We'll get back on schedule. We'll get back to our routine of life. Those things will even out. They always do. We don't have to worry about that. Thank goodness for that. I think you're here today. I don't think you're worried about it. There may be some folks that are listening that have some anxiety about it. I understand that. We don't want to downplay that. But listen, God's in control. He knows what he's doing. Thank goodness. I don't have to worry about my next breath because the Lord has ordained it. One way or the other, I'm either here taking another breath or I'm with him. And if we understand that control that he has in our lives, that type of confidence we have, we don't have to worry about that. We need to be wise, we need to be good stewards, but thank goodness he's ultimately in control. We know the end of the book. Right? We know that. We're not all going to die of coronavirus. It was not in the book of Revelation. You know? God has other plans for this globe. Thank goodness for that. I think we found our lives disrupted. But it looks to me like a lot of times in Scripture, when people's lives were disrupted, God was just getting ready to use them. God was just getting ready to do something. God was just getting them prepared for the next step. So let's see what that is. Individually, as a church, let's see what that is. Let's prepare our hearts and get ready. Let's be ever more grounded in our faith so we're ready for what God has in store for us in the days ahead. Whether it gets better or worse in the short term, let's see what God has planned for us. Let's have a word.